Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for your mayor. I'm encouraging a lot of people in Abbotsford that are really well respected, and that is called Suki Dami. I asked them to run for council now and help your South Asians. I asked Gurpreet Rai to run for council and help the South Asians. I asked Barty Sandhu and many more other people I'm asking to run. When Henry Brown went into the city, he went in with a select team. Under the myth, they were called councils and mayor, but they were legitimately friends. When Henry's son, who was a proving officer, was taking information to enrichate himself, so when he stepped out of the city, he could take that portfolio, it was insider trading. When they sat on the council up at Henry's house to pass the decisions with council, it was insider trading, it was collaborating, and Darren Brown showed it, and they were rigging the decisions. Under the private police that Henry controlled 100% with a few city officials, and then Ed Fast and Mike DeYoung, it would halt the investigations because they believed that the Abbotsford police were the only way in this town that unless we investigate, nobody goes to jail. Abbotsford First were doing favors for Henry, and now Henry owed them. They helped with Henry's son. They damaged the homes up behind Lou's Bar and Grill, and they figured they blocked the homeowners. They covered Henry's hit and run, the threats, and they weren't calling it out. I want to tell you this. Some people said, you know, what about Les Barkman? Les Barkman's a piece of crap. Any man that stands by and watched what happened at the sports center when Abbotsford First said I grabbed Sandy Blue to load Ross Siemens, Barty Sandhu called that out, and Les knew better. Les will crawl at any floor and anywhere there is to get elected. Some people are thinking that Les is a double agent. He really tells Bruce Bamman and other people, I'm with you, but then he's with them and he says, no, I'm taking the intel and the out-of-tal and everything. City Informer said he's a piece of crap and he needs to be called out too, Mr. Pelican. That was an attempted murder, and he knew on Dave Sidhu's property, he knew on Barrowtown Waterworks, on the Farmers Gone Missing, on Jake's Contracting. He knew the rocks on Gladys Avenue. He figures that, you know, he tries to distance himself from them, then he defends them. What am I doing here? I'm on Vitalis's property, Dave Sidhu's. The question now is about ethics and morals to David Eby. Was David Eby aware through Lana Pop-Up that he knew that this was the city councilor's, Dave Sidhu's property and his dad's? And he knew that the city council, through Ross Siemens and the council that he ran under Abbotsford First and helped with Ross Siemens, that were partners, they were partners, that he stood to gain on insider trading, lifting his dad's land, also helping with permits and headhunting. I want to make something clear so Dave Sidhu can hear it. With Abbotsford's Colin Watson, don't worry, there's a lot of gangs on town. Me and my gangs are going to chase Mr. Pelican and people in the elections. There's about 5,000 farmers in Abbotsford, David Eby, that this piece of property and this could have went on by the Vanderpoels, and it could have been done. But creating this co-op, this ag co-op, this cooperative, the cooperative means you have to have the quota from the farmers, and you have to have everybody that's on the board agree with it, and they all have a say. It wasn't under the Vanderpoels. The Vanderpoels privately owned it. They were a multi-million-dollar company. They didn't need to hand out. And David Eby went in and was lobbied through Ross Siemens. So either David Eby's got to stand up and say, I'm a lawyer, I take on Donald Trump, but I'm an idiot in Abbotsford because I got played. Now the city councilor, Dave Sidhu, stood to gain with his dad. He enrichinated himself. They passed the decisions through council, and Mark Warkentine, who was also Abbotsford First, is a lawyer, and they knew this. And now Dave Sidhu wanted to recall the elections, Abbotsford South Asians, and say he wanted another turn, because like all thieves, what did RCMP tell you, and what did they wait for? A thief has to return, and he comes back. City informers told me today, when I was going to do this podcast, they said, Mr. Pelican, you know why Dave Sidhu and these guys are all calling the election? Why? Because they believe your YouTube videos, the authorities haven't come in on them, and they believe that nobody's paying attention to your YouTube videos because it has Ed Fast, Mike DeYoung, and the top of Abbotsford Police. And to come in here and raid it all, it will cause everybody. I said, no. Why they're not sending the RCMP in here? Mike Sir had enough information to pull Henry down, and they were blackjacking. You call on me, you call on me. Dave Sidhu is a sitting city council. And he ran with Abbotsford first. He increased his dad's richness in his portfolio and he headhunted it. And David Eby used it. And then the Vitalis, the Vanderpoels, took a small part in an act that says under a cooperative, you could do this. But he also moved that ag industrial to agriculture to waive the taxes when there was about 5,000 places he could have did this before Dave Sidhu's property. And they needed to pay Dave Sidhu back for the newspaper, the threats of the election, and helping on the decisions that Darren Brown showed. Well, Dave Sidhu knew that Henry's son was in front of him. He knew that Henry lifted the bus terminal. He knew all the pieces of property that Henry was busting and shopping. He knew Rob Funk's decision he sat on. So it was only common that they were going to protect Dave Sidhu and nobody was going to go down. And they went in the city to enrich and aid themselves, and they tried to tell Abbotsford there was so much. They have to go back and they want more. And you know Henry will say, look, you got to run. There's the money that we're trying to get to dig the big canal for the farmers. There's the $500 million at UFV. There's all this infrastructure that he'll be trying to load the same city councils because that's what a mob does. The mob believes that they can get the same people because now it's too risky to take a chance on anybody else, so you would try to back the same ones. And you can see it by Ross's face. He's wearing the embarrassment. He's wearing the shame. He didn't know which way to go. I told you they have to call it. They would have to call the election no matter what they do, and they have to stand there. And it would be all fun and games for Abbotsford and me as a political politician to smash them because now you're on the world stage. Now they would have to go back to their old games, and you watch their old games like criminals do, the RCMP. Dave Sidhu will use his garbage rag newspaper with Andy Sidhu. He'll come around to tell all the South Asians, listen, we're really with you. Me and my son are really going to change things now. You got to get behind my son, and he'll tell you everything, what he's going to do, brainwashing you. He'll try to pull connections again at UFV to block students. They'll go pick up signs. They'll use electoral officer now to block and go after signs. They'll use the Chamber of Commerce to load and say, no, you can't debate. They'll use the South Asian Chamber of Commerce. You watch them go to work. And this is what they did last time, and I'm going to make sure my city councils that are running and your city councils have a chance. So I'm asking all the South Asian farmers, please pass the video out. And I'm going to make sure that when councils start to run that are legit, that I have an open conversation with attorneys, and that BC election is aware of that Dave Sidhu has to be charged for insider trading. And when you're charged under insider trading, you can't run forward in the election. So this is why the Abbotsford police have been ordered by the elites from the back guys, and you can see that is why Amric Moran was given a private escort to have a party with Mike DeYoung, Simon Gibson, Mark Warkentine, and everybody of the establishment, because it was no longer your town, it was theirs, and they were trading on jobs. It wasn't about money no more. They got into organized crime where they threatened people's lives, they left people for dead, and the Abbotsford police believed under their uniform these disgusting men were doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is insider trading. No matter what the shit Colin Watts tells you, his dumb shithole investigators or his staff tells you. It's insider trading. Dave Sidhu is a sitting city council. Him and Ross Siemens and Abbotsford First were all one. Mark Warkentine's a lawyer. There's 5,000 farmers or more. This land could have been put on industrial. They didn't. They specifically, the city staff said they headhunted Dave Sidhu's property. They gave it a significant lift. They all worked together to sit on the council to make sure it was passed. They laughed and giggled in the public's face and these neighbors' faces that we would never get caught. We're never going to be caught or charged for it. We say goes. There'll be no criminal investigations because the mayor sits on the board of the Abbotsford Police. We'll lift Andy Sidhu's property, which is his son. Dave Sidhu's his son, and we'll give it a significant lift. Vitalis will use the part that it takes a part of getting the grant under the ag and under going to David Eby and saying we're creating a cooperative. When there was no co-ops, there was no quota, there was nothing given. And then they'll use Vitalis to get the $30 million, and David Eby will run and hide and say, let Abbotsford residents fight it, because Corky Neufeld's already kissed the backs of the establishment, because that's why he was at Mike DeYoung's party. And Corky Neufeld is a sitting BC Conservative MLA. He should have never been with Mike DeYoung, because Abbotsford made it clear to me today. We ran Corky Newsfelt, that little piece of garbage, they said. Actually, they called him a piece of shit. We ran that piece of shit against Mike DeYoung to unseat Mike DeYoung and get him out of there, and now he hangs with him. Said, what was your distance of helping Corky Newfelt? He went and partied with him. They hung. They showed to Abbotsford that Amric Moran is the guy they're going to load for these decisions. And Amric's a lawyer, a 25-year lawyer. And this is insider trading. Dave Sidhu wanted to call the election again. He waited and waited and waited, Abbotsford City informants told me, because there was no charges pressed by Abbotsford police or investigations for insider trading, because they owned that private police department. Remember the lady that stole the Abbotsford police? Remember Bill Vanderzam in insider trading? This is Andy Sidhu's son. And this is Ross Siemens' very best friend. When it comes to marriage, Ross Siemens' wife takes second place in this marriage. It's Ross and Dave Sidhu. They tried to say we're split. When Andy Sidhu comes knocking with Ross Siemens and he goes, oh, Uncle, please, South Asians, please, please, Joe's got to remember this. The Corn King, Jolly Lolly, all got to remember this. Dave Sidhu will never change his colors. He never stood by his people when Henry dumped on Mogel with the task force. He never stood with his people when Henry damaged the South Asians' homes. He never stood with Abbotsford residents when Henry attacked the South Asians. He never stood with the Abbotsford residents when Henry left the city and could have killed him at the protest when he tried to kill me and leave the scene. He never stood with them, because he was always with the establishment, and the establishment stands to lose millions of dollars they set up in the city. That is the Abbotsford Air Show. And if I was Dave Sidhu and I was Ross Siemens, I get on one of them fast jets and I get out of town. So now it's about principles and morals. And the question is to David Eby, how much did David Eby know on this insider trading with Dave Sidhu and Ross Siemens here on Tracy Road? And this is why the city said Peter Sparanese quit. It was insider trading, it's not retirement, and he fled. And they're going to try to wing it and say if we get in elected again, we can't be charged. We don't get charged. I'm live, Abbotsford News Club.